Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Value and Challenges of Internal API Programs. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Melissa Weir, Mastery's Marketing Operations Manager, and I will be your host for today. Before we get started, let's go over a little bit of housekeeping. All lines are on mute, and this presentation is being recorded. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar in which you can chat your questions into the GoToWebinar console, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. Today we're very excited to have with us John Oberon, our VP of Engineering, and Peter Nahir, Platform Architect at Mastery. With that, I'd like to turn it over to John Oberon.
Just by way of introduction, this is year 20 for me in the industry. Very excited to be part of Mastery, and thanks again for taking the time out to hear from us. Peter, he's one of our platform architects with over 15 years of experience developing products and solutions, ranging from web-based enterprise applications to distributed services in the cloud. Right now, Peter's focusing on part of our platform layer that builds resilient modular software.
Good morning.
Okay, so as on agenda, what we're trying to do here is really just kind of define what we mean by an internal API, go through the classics on what types of fears or paranoias we have from an architecture and an engineering perspective, some battle-scarred approaches to patterns and practices, and attempt to wrap that up in what we view as the value of why we should consider and why we should approach and pay attention to internal APIs. All right, so at a high level, right, what we've seen over the last few years is the demand for public APIs. This is APIs that expose some type of data or feature or functionality is becoming more and more apparent. There are some buzzwords like Internet of Things and so on, and connected devices. But what we've seen is that demand for having more capability and accessibility from an external perspective for external developers to build compelling and delightful consumer-based applications is quite strong. That is actually pushing enterprises to rethink how we build programmatic exposure via APIs for internal usage. So what we're saying here for this not public internal APIs is there's still a customer-facing type of componentry. It could be things like a supply chain component or what have you. There could be some partner-facing elements where we're not building everything ourselves. There is a build by adopt type of capability, say a billing and entitlement solution. And there's also an internal audience type of perspective on how internal employees can actually leverage those things. And what we've noticed is, as a consumer, we're all consumers, the expectation for delightful experiences and just anytime access to features and functionality is just part of how we live. Once we go into larger enterprise workplaces, it seems a little behind the times. And the goal and the intention of this presentation and webinars, the patterns and practices on how we can up-level internal construction of APIs and how we can expose that. So with that said, I'd like to hand that over to Peter to go deeper into the architectural challenges.
All right. So let's look at some of the challenges commonly encountered by enterprise companies when they build an internal API. So in many cases, there are already a number of systems that are deployed across the enterprise. Each system typically supports a specific functional area, such as you might have the accounting system, the order processing, a system, inventory tracking and management, and so on. So these are often legacy systems with their own unique storage mechanisms, access protocols, user interfaces, and whatnot. For instance, some of these systems may have a SOAP interface or even a proprietary messaging protocol, or they may even just be a bunch of database tables that you have to access directly using the database client. And in some cases, there may not even be a way to access the system through any means other than the user interface it came with, which could be a major obstacle for you when you try to expose the functionality through an internal API. But hopefully, you are able to obtain connectors and technology that makes these accessible and don't have to resort to something like screen scraping. Many companies also take advantage of SaaS products to help them run their business. For example, you might have an external system that runs your CRM or a shipping service and whatnot. And these might be completely outside of your enterprise firewall. But these tend to have modern APIs and basically support integration already. So in this picture, you have a mixture of modern and legacy systems that you use to run your business. Now, if you want to build an application, such as an employee portal or a management reporting application that aggregates data and functionality from across these systems, you are essentially stuck with having to access each of these systems individually using their particular protocol, authentication mechanism, their own idea of user identity, and so on. And even if you manage to develop a common code base that you can then reuse to build applications and implement a degree of consistency among them, you're still faced with the challenge of making these applications interact with each other or coexist basically at runtime during operation. For example, is there a way for you to know from the resource perspective which system is being used and by which application at any given time throughout the day or throughout any given period of time? Are you able to manage your application's backend resource usage, or are you going to unexpectedly run into capacity issues with your backend system? And this may go beyond slowness. For example, you might flat out run out of client licenses, and that would basically prevent you from using the system. If you have an application that overuses the system, you may not have a way to basically ration the access to that system.
Yeah, so this is great. I think on a meta point from an engineering perspective, one should always take into account the cost of complexity. And what I mean by that is, in a silo, as one is building one particular solution that's using, say, one data tier element and pieces, that's fairly simple. But as we all know, in an enterprise space, complexity increases over time, and the level of brittleness and the lack of fault tolerance and resiliency for features and applications that we don't yet know are needed in the market become very apparent and very real. And what we found in this type of pattern is time to market goes way up. The TCO is also increases, and we feel that there's some opportunity to actually help solve this problem specifically. Okay, so on to the next slide.
Yes, please. Okay, so what is the approach that you can take to implementing an internal API? So what you have to do really is you need to build a common API platform for these internal API. This platform needs to encompass the best practices and use the best technologies that are, or the appropriate technologies for the job. For instance, your API should probably be based on HTTP protocol, and it should be RESTful. These are some of the concepts that have been very successful out there in the public space, and they should be just as successful inside the enterprise boundaries. What you will achieve with a common platform like this, you will basically create consistency for all the applications, and you need to provide common facilities for all the APIs, such as you need to implement access control policies. You need to define the authentication mechanism that should ideally be uniform across all the APIs on your platform. And you need to provide for discoverability of the APIs so that your internal development teams that work on applications that use these API know what they can use, where they can find it, and what it will do. So second important thing you need to do is you need to socialize this internal API. You basically need to sell the idea of using the API to access all the underlying systems and basically the platform as a unit, rather than having each application go and access each individual underlying system. So you need to bring the individual resource owners on board. They need to be convinced that it's beneficial for everybody to participate in this platform, and that there's a common set of policies that protect the resources that these departments may be responsible for. And you really need to discourage and even prevent direct access to these systems, because the whole point of having an internal API is to have that layer of indirection between the application and the individual resources that it uses. And a very important point, you really need to treat the internal API as a product. So to that end, you need to plan it as a product. You need to develop and publish a feature roadmap. You need to implement a proper release management, and that basically gives the participants the visibility into what you're planning to do, when you're planning to do it, and to give them the confidence in the quality of the releases and all that stuff that comes with it. On the implementation side, you need to assure a level of uptime that the users come to expect. You need to provide for the scalability. It makes a big difference whether 100 users and 10,000 users access the API and the underlying systems. And you need to provide for consistency among all these APIs, so that application developers are accustomed to one API are able to transfer their knowledge and experience to using the other. On management side, you need to provide develop access control policies and provide access control to the API itself. Basically, ration access to scarce resources if you have any. You need to develop and publish documentation, provide insight into the usage of your API. Again, from the application perspective, from the individual system perspective, all the angles that you need in order to manage this platform successfully. And you also need to provide support, because basically in this picture, your application developers are really your customers. You need to support your application developers, the internal teams that develop applications on your platform, as if it was a real product.
Yeah, I totally agree with Peter on this one. To me, this is always a constraint satisfaction problem. We're always trying to balance the needs of the customer with the needs of the employee and the voice of the shareholder. And this is a non-trivial type of exercise. But what I found was, if we don't treat all those three perspectives and points of views as first-class citizens, the likelihood of problems or chaos into the system goes way up on that side. And when we're looking at, especially in an enterprise type of space where we're mired with, budget constraints, time, resources, changing market type of demands, and when we're looking at, what may be construed as a heavy word platform, what we're really saying is provide the right level of abstraction and component level isolation, so we have that ability to go faster, right? And if we do that in such a way that treats this API as a bona fide product, that we think we can scale this to, say, 10,000 or 100,000 queries per second, right? Where accessing this at high scale, right, how we approach and think about evolving and catering to the customer's needs will change, right? And the more evolution on the platform side with respect to APIs, the faster teams can go, the less resources are needed, and so on.
Okay, so if we look at the pattern that emerges when we pursue this approach, we basically have the internal API platform as a layer that abstracts away the individual nuances of the systems that participate in the platform. And now the applications that are built to use these resources access them through these through the APIs built on top of the platform instead of directly in each individual resource directly. So you know, the benefit of that obviously is the ability to change the resources that participate, to change the systems. If you need to upgrade a system and are able to expose the same functionality through the same or similar API, then you are isolating your applications from the change. Also, in some cases, if you, for instance, need to bring an external product in-house because, for instance, it evolved into a more of a core business concern or more of a strategic system for you, and you need to bring it in-house, then you are able to smooth out this transition using the API, because the applications, there's continuity for the applications in the API that they use. And you know, again, there's consistency in the way that the functionality is exposed. There's a common set of policies for access control, resource usage, the full management support of the API. And one very interesting beneficial side effect of this is that now you are able to facilitate the development of applications that were not possible before or were very difficult and costly to implement before. So you might have some high-value applications that are narrow in the use case that they support, but deliver high value to the enterprise. And before, they might have been too expensive to develop because of the challenges that that the enterprise would face when trying to do that.
Yeah, this is great. I think if we're always trying to balance, you know, innovation with predictability, right? And what we found through tried and true and battle scar methods is this pattern vastly improves our likelihood of success and the ability to anticipate changes in the market demands and us being able to leverage all the hard work that we built. This pattern actually helps solve that situation. So I think this is something that I strongly encourage everybody to follow. It may look simple and kind of pattern, but the opportunity to go very quickly and actually have more predictable resources focused at the top layer, right? One can spend about 80% of their energy on that side, whereas the remaining 20 is kind of more on the infrastructure layer. So just to go in, because I do want to make time for our Q&A, we have a few questions. You know, just to recap, getting the right principles, mindset, or what we call guardrails on how APIs are created is very important, right? You know, from the service-oriented architecture to RESTful-based guidelines and principles. As long as we're explicit with those things, that goes a long way. It's, as we've seen, especially in today's world where 5 nines, almost 6 nines is the new black with respect to availability, the notion of optimized infrastructure service is more and more apparent. We need to pay attention to true continuous integration, right, with the ability for just-in-time spin-outs and environments and rollouts. That's just par for the course. So I strongly encourage to pay attention to that area. As we look more on the platform tier, specifically around the data component, how that gets mature if we're looking at relational or unstructured, non-relational type of data as a service solutions, having what I call good enough taxonomy that's not trying to boil the ocean, but provides systems of records on how we can enable this abstraction so these development teams can move faster is an important piece. And of course, agree at the onset on the fundamental approach. There's a lot of great ideas, and I would argue that the how and the what are equally as important. And by having that upfront type of view is in my opinion, important. So just to cap, we've seen here at Mastery, we've seen a huge explosion in how this market has not only been defined, but how it's evolved over time. And you can see from this slide that there's lots of motion. And I hope that you saw value in this approach in this webinar. Of course, any feedback is always greatly appreciated. In the interest of time, I do want to go through a couple of questions to answer that. And Peter, I think these are directed more towards you.
Yes, so if you guys have questions, thank you so much, John and Peter. Go ahead and just type those into the chat box on the GoToMeeting console. It looks like we have a couple of questions coming through already. So the first question we have is, any advice on modernizing SOAP calls?
Okay, I'll take that. Advice on modernizing SOAP calls. So the inherent challenge with SOAP-based interfaces is that they are message-oriented, and we've seen in the recent years that the RESTful approach is much more common and much more successful. So if you're unable to basically switch away from a SOAP-based interface, then perhaps simplifying it and sort of driving away from the message-oriented approach toward more resource-oriented would be one way to sort of bridge the chasm.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It looks like our next question is kind of along the same lines. So, how is this different or advantageous over the concepts of SOA? What is a suggestion for enterprises who have already implemented SOA internally, of course, over SOAP or XML?
Okay, so when we say SOA in an enterprise, this could very well be the underlying architecture for the internal API. The difference there would be that I think the way you treat the API as a platform, and the way you manage the touch points between the platform and the application, the application ecosystem basically that evolves inside the enterprise, and the resources that are used to basically implement the APIs. So the underlying architecture should still be service-oriented, and if you are able to expose those services and the data that the services operate on as RESTful, then you basically are reaping the benefits of this approach that have been successful out there in the public side of the API.
Yeah, I agree. I view this as a complementary and evolutionary phase on how we can move those things forward. But yeah, good. Thank you.
So it looks like our next question is, do you have or is there a good tool to continuously monitor or test all of these APIs?
That's a great question. It's tricky. What we found is if we look at the infrastructure layer, right, across configuration management, across alerting, monitoring, there are some good tools. Personally, when we get to reduce, let me back up. If we want to reduce risk and really optimize on the tooling on how we can actually expose those APIs. Standard configuration management systems like Puppet or what have you do a fine job, coupled with environment build-out capabilities such as Vagrant is actually quite good. When you get into real-time or near real-time analysis on how we monitor, that's a subject for a deeper discussion, and we'll have another webinar on exactly that topic, so stay tuned for that. I think we're happy.
Okay, and with that, thank you so much, Sean and Peter, for your time today and explanation of the value and challenges of internal API programs. So we encourage everyone to reach out. You can email us at communications@mastery.com if you have any follow-up questions. You will receive a recording of the webinar within the next 48 hours. We thank you again for attending, and we hope you found the content valuable, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.